Today, we are going to discuss one of the important concept called static. Right. So going further, we'll discuss what are the different static members, right? Static constructor, static method, static class, static variable, static properties. Everything we are going to discuss. But first, we need to understand what is the use of static keyword. Right. Right. Without understanding the use of static keyword, it is very difficult for us to understand what are static members, what are non-static members, what is static variable, non-static variable, what is static constructor, what is non-static constructor, what is static method, and what is non-static method. Right. If we want to understand those concepts very clearly, first of all, we need to understand the word static keyword. When we need to use the keyword static. Right. If you if you will ask this question to any of the senior developer or any of the programmer who are having good experience in the industry, they mostly probably answer you that static keyword is used in factory design pattern, static keyword used in singleton design pattern, as well as they might be answer you that static keyword is used for data sharing purpose. Right. Why they are saying this? Because they are using because the static word most probably used in factory design pattern, singleton design pattern, as well as for data sharing. So they are using in those scenarios, they are answering the answer like this. But that is not the that is not the real meaning of static keyword, right? We are using in factory design pattern, it is well and fine. But why we are going to use in factory design pattern? Right? The static word should have some specific meaning, right? Should have some specific purposes where we need to select or where we need to choose the static keywords, right? So at the end of this session, we'll understand the three main purposes or three basic reasons why you need to choose the static keyword, right? So to understand this, we'll directly create one application and we'll directly try to understand the use of static keyword. Let us first create a console application with the static name static keyword demo. So yeah, you can use any version. I'm going with Visual Studio 2017 for this application, but you can also create 2022, 2019, whichever Visual Studio version installed on your machine, you can use that version. No issue. So let's select the Visual C# from the installed template, then select the console application. You can see there are .NET Core and .NET Framework. I'm going with the .NET Core. I'm giving the application name as static keyword demo, and I'm selecting .NET Framework 4.8, which is the latest version. And after selecting the console application, providing the name, providing the framework, simply click on the OK button. It will create a console application with the name static keyword demo with this structure, right? This is the our main program class. Why I'm saying it is a main program class, because this program class by default contains the main method, and from this main method our program execution is going to start, right? So now let us create a class file with the name countrymaster.cs. Okay, let me close this one. Okay, let me add a class file with the name static keyword demo. See, in your existing project, this is one class file, but if you want to add another class file, you just need to click add. You can see your class. You can directly click on the class option. Even you can click on the new item, and after new item, you can select the template class here and provide the name countrymaster.cs and then click on the OK button. So it will add a class file countrymaster.cs. You can see with this code. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy paste this code. Okay, let me copy paste, then I will explain you the code. Okay, see, this is a very simple class file having three properties. This is the auto implemented property, this is another auto implemented property, and this is a read only property, and this is one insert method, right? So what is the use of this property? See, when we are going to, so basically what is the purpose of this method is we are going to insert the country detail when we call the insert method. As part of the country detail, what we will take country name, country code from the user, right? Country code is like something 3-digit letter, IND for India, USA for United States America, right? So this is the country code. And this country name means the fully qualified full name, right? So we are taking, and this computer name basically it will return you on the machine from where you are inserting the data. So whenever you write system.environment.machine name, it will give you the actual machine name from where you are inserting the data. For example, if you go to the this PC and if you go to the properties window, then you will see that this is nothing but my machine name, laptop ICA12CQL, right? And if you want to retrieve this machine name, then you need to write this statement. Okay, let us prove this. Suppose I'm taking this and I'm just writing here console.writeLine, and I'm just writing this. I'm just printing the machine name. So once you run this application, it will print you the machine name on which this application is running. So currently this application is running on this machine, laptop ICA2LCQL, and that is what we have seen now, ICA2LCQL. So this is same as the machine name, computer name or full computer name. This is nothing but your machine name, right? So what is the basic purpose of this property is to retrieve the machine name, right? So once we retrieve the computer details, like country details, like country code, country name, then internally we will get this machine name. And once we get this machine name internally, along with this computer code and computer name, we will write the database logic, and that will be inserted the data into the database, right? So computer name property tells from which computer the record is being inserted. Here we need to write the logic to insert the country details into the database. Now I'm not going to write any logic as part of this method because we are not going to insert the data into the database now, but I'm just going to show you the use of static keyword. Later when we will discuss SQL Server and ADO.NET or Entity Framework, I will explain how to insert and how to perform CRUD operation against the database. But for now, just the insert method. Good morning. So just the insert method, which is basically going to insert the data into the database. So this is your country code. So this property is going to hold like IND. This country name property is going to hold IND and this machine name, this is a read-only property. You can see it is only having the get accessor, right? So this is nothing but it's going to store the machine name on which machine you are inserting the data. Currently, if I run this application, it give me my machine name, right? Once you have this data, then you can insert this data into the computer. Okay, so you can see this. Whoever have used their video, please stop it. Video is not allowed. Okay. Okay, so this is country master. And is there any doubt related to the properties? So this is auto implemented properties, right? This is another auto implemented property. This is a read only property, and this is a insert method. This is our insert method. And this insert method is basically insert the country code, country name, and along with the country code, country name from which machine this data was being inserted, that will be provided with the help of this computer name property. And we have already seen when we execute this statement, it will return us the machine name. That is all about our country master code, right? Now let's create another class file with the name customer.cs to insert the customer data into the database. So to do so, now I can right click and add class file. So directly I can click on the class and then I can provide the name and click on the add button. So let me copy paste the code, then I will explain you the things. right? So you can see this is my customer code. This is the auto implemented property. This is a customer name. This is another auto implemented property. This is my machine name variable, right? And this is one is empty method, and this is insert method. As you can see currently here, what I'm checking, I'm checking if the customer code property is not empty, and if the customer name is not empty, then I'm going to insert the data, right? If not empty, if customer code is not empty, so is empty means it is a method. It is a method in the string class. Sorry, it is a method here we have defined. What this method is checking now, if it will take some string value, and so suppose this customer code, so we are storing some data, right? So then this is empty method will be called. So this is empty method will return me true or false. If the value length is greater than 0, it will return me true. And if the length is not greater than 0, then it will return me false. And same thing I'm checking with the customer name property, right? If the customer name is empty, then it will return me false. And if the customer name is true, then it will return me true. And if both are returning true, then I'm inserting the data. But while I'm inserting the data, again, I have to find out the machine name, right? Problem is here, right? Why the problem is here? Because the because the logic to find out the machine name is written inside the country master class. Yes or no? The logic to find out the machine name is written inside the country master name, country master class. So I cannot rewrite the same logic here. If I'm rewriting the same logic here means what? Now I'm duplicating the code. Yes or no? If I rewrite this logic inside the customer class, then what it means? It means I'm duplicating the logic. I'm rewriting the code. Again, this is empty method is written here, right? Now if I want to check, this logic, I also want to check the same logic here. I also want to check the country code and country name. If both are empty, then I should not enter, right? So I need to check whether the country code is empty or not, whether the country name is empty or not. But the logic is implemented where? The logic is implemented inside the customer class. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so basically one thing you have to remember, the logic to find the computer name is written inside the country master class, and the logic to check whether a variable or whether a value length is greater than 0 or not. If it is greater than 0, it will return true, else return false, right? So to check whether a value is empty or not is written inside the country master class. But what our requirement is, our requirement, we should have this logic. We should use this method inside this country master class, and we should use this country name property inside this customer class, right? But if you look at the signature, this method is defined as private, and this method is defined as public, right? So I cannot directly access this class or property from here, right? Why I cannot access? Because this is implemented as private. Private means only within this class this property is available. From outside the class, this property is not available. And if you look at this, this is private. Private means it is only available within the customer class. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now what you might be thinking that, okay, sir, can we do one thing? Can we make this as a public? Yes, we can make this as public. Can we make this as a public? Yes, we can make this as public. Right or not? So once you make this as a public, then what is the problem you are facing? That we need to understand now. Now let us create a object of country master class. Okay. So what I'm doing here, country master equals to new country master dot. You can see computer name, country code, country name, insert method. See, this computer name property is for our internal use or external use. Computer name is for internal use. User not going to give you the computer name. Computer name means on which computer you are inserting the data, right? On which computer you are inserting the data, that computer name will automatically inserted while you are inserting the data. That means we should not expose the computer name property, right? But as soon as you make this public property as public, say it is available to outside world, right? From outside world we can access this property. This should not be there. One of the OOPS concept principle is abstraction. Abstraction means what you have to expose only what are necessary. Don't expose the thing which are not necessary. In our example, this computer name property is for internal use. It should not be exposed to the outside world. But as soon as you make this public, you are violating the OOPS abstraction principle, because using this from once you make this as public, you can access this, right? You can access this. So this should not be the case. You should not access this property from outside the class. But once you make this as public, you are accessing this. Again, now if you look at the customer class, you make this each empty property as public. Now, if you look at the customer class, right, then you will see that each method is also exposed. You will see that each empty method is exposed, right? So customer code is exposed. That is fine, because customer will send the customer code. Customer will send the customer name. Customer will call the customer insert method. But what is the use of each empty method? Each empty method we should not expose to the outside world. Na? Each empty method is only for internal use, right? Internal use in the sense it should be used inside this class only. I'm using this each empty method internally. Internally means within this insert method, I'm calling the each empty method. I should not expose this method to outside world. From the user of the class, what is the use of exposing this each empty method? He's not going to use this each empty method to do any kind of operation. This each empty method is only for internal purpose, internal use. Should not be exposed to the outside world. But as soon as you make this method as public, it is exposed to the outside world, right? So in this case, we are also violating the OOPS principle. So you are also here. We are also violating the OOPS abstraction principle, right? Now our intention is we should not violate the OOPS principle, and we should achieve code reusability. How we can do this? You understand my question?
Yes, sir.
Right. So here we are violating the OOPS principle, and here so basically what our intention is, we need to design the application in such a way that we should not violate the OOPS principle, and we should achieve code reusability, right? I'm not going to write this logic more than once, right? This logic should not be written more than once. Along with this, our application should not violate the OOPS abstraction principle. As part of the customer object, this method should not be exposed, right? As part of the country master class, this property should not be exposed, right? But we should not expose the property. So we should achieve OOPS principle, OOPS abstraction principle. Along with, I'm not going to rewrite this logic multiple times. So I should achieve code reusability, right? If you want to achieve code reusability, and if you want to achieve the OOPS principle, if you do not want to avoid the OOPS principle, and if you want to achieve the code reusability, then we should not have this code inside this class, and we should not have this flow inside this class. So what we can do is we can take, or we can remove these two pieces of code into a separate class. Let's create a class called common task, and let's move this class code inside this common task. So let's add a class file. common task.cs, and what I'm going to do, okay. So now you can see this common task is having two properties. What is each empty property, and this is computer name property, right? So once I have written this logic inside the common task, let us remove this logic from here. Let us remove this logic from here. Let us remove this logic from here, right? So what we need to do, we need to call the isEmpty method. So if you want to call the isEmpty method, then what you need to do, right? First of all, you need to create an instance of this common task. Yes or no? And once you create an instance, then you can call the isEmpty method. Is that clear? Now this error is gone. Again, how to initialize this? You can create a constructor, customer class constructor, create an instance, right? And you can set the machine name. Is that clear? Now what I'm doing here, I'm creating a constructor. This is a constructor. And using this constructor, I'm creating an instance of a common text class. This is my common task. And once I create the instance, then I'm invoking the computer name property, and whatever value return, I rewrite in this class. And what I'm doing here, I'm creating an instance of a common text class, and I'm just calling the isEmpty method. So in this case, the logic is written at one place or not. The logic is written inside the common text class, and whatever the common logic is required, we have put inside the common text class. Then creating the instance of common text and calling the computer name property to set the machine name, and here I'm calling the isEmpty method, right? Now again, here what I'm going to do, I can also write the same logic here, right? So what I can do is I can write this. So instead of this, I can write like this or not? You understood? Yes or no? And here I can even see. So computer name, but now the logic is not written here. The logic is written here, right? Where is logic? Logic get written environment.machine name, and I'm just using the common text instance and calling this computer name property, right? So in this case, we are achieving code reusability, right? So the same code I have reused in multiple times. I have used this isEmpty method 4 places. Here I'm using, here I'm implementing, here I'm using, and here I'm using. And even the computer name property I have used at 2 places. Here I'm using the computer name property, and even here I'm using the computer name property to return the machine name. That means code reusability we are achieving, and we are also achieving the OOPS principle. How? Now see, now if you are going to use customer name property, then you will see only what is necessary: customer code, customer name, and insert method. These 3 methods we want to expose. These 3 are available, right? Now, if you want to use the country master, then you will see that this country master is also having this country code, country name, and insert method, right? So if you check this country code, country name, and insert, so these things are hidden. So that means we achieve code reusability, and we achieve we implement the abstraction principle. Abstraction principle means Now, as part of the customer country master or customer, we are not exposing any logic for the each empty or for the computer name or machine name property, right? As part of this, we are not writing, we are not exposing the computer name property, or we are not exposing the each empty or each empty method, right? So that means we are not exposing the unnecessary details. What is necessary? If someone to insert some data, then he needs to know he needs to set the country code and country name and call this method. That is we are exposing. And in this case, if you want to insert some customer details, then customer name, customer code is mandatory, and he needs to call the insert method. So here machine name is not required from the user of our class to set the machine, right? Machine name is internally set because it is only used, it is used for internal purpose. So the point that you need to remember, whatever things you want to expose, make them as public. Whatever things you don't want to expose, make them as private. In this way, you can achieve abstraction. Abstraction means expose only those things which are necessary. Hide those things which are unnecessary. So in this case, this is unnecessary to the user of our class. We need to hide it. How we can hide it? By making them as private. These two things we need to expose, so make them as public. This insert method is required for the customer to insert the data, make them as public. Even once you start OOPS principle, OOPS concept, we will discuss the abstraction concept in detail. For now, just remember abstraction means expose only those things which are necessary, right? Now you might be thinking that, yeah, what is our requirement? We are achieving good reusability, and we are achieving OOPS principle. That means our code seems to be fine. Our code seems to be okay. If this is your thought, then you are wrong place. This is not the appropriate solution. If you want to understand what problem we are doing with this common text class, we need to understand the common text class in detail, right? Let us understand the common text class. The common text class is a collection of unrelated method and properties that are not related to each other. So if you look at the common text class, is there any relation between this empty method and computer name property? Is there any relation? Can anybody tell me?
No, sir.
So there is no relation between this empty method and the computer name property. That is what first one. This is a collection of unrelated method and properties that are not related to each other, because it has unrelated method properties logic. It doesn't represent any real world object. Is this represent any real world entities? Real world entity. Customer is a real world entity. It is having customer code, customer name, and this is insert method. Said all are related to each other and it represents a customer entity. In this case, country code, country name, computer name is insert. So these are related to customer, country master, and country master is a real world entity, right? But in this case, is empty and country name, first of all, they are not related to each other. Second thing, they doesn't represent any common text. Common text means what? Is it any represent any real world entity? No, it doesn't represent any real world entities, right? So first point is clear. So this means common text is a collection of unrelated method and properties which are not related to each other. They are not related to each other. They doesn't even represent any real world object. Second, as it doesn't represent any real world object, so any kind of OOPS principle, inheritance, abstraction, polymorphism, encapsulation should not be applied to this common task, right? So as it is not related to real world, so no OOPS principle should be applicable to this common task. No OOPS principle means even we should not create an instance of this class. If no OOPS principle is there, means we should not have to create an instance even of the class, right? So if you look at my code, here I'm creating an instance of the class or not? This common text class instance I am creating, right? In this case, I am creating common text class instance, right? So no OOPS principle should be applicable to this common text class. Third point. So we can say that this is a fixed class, right? That is a class with a fixed behavior. Its behavior cannot be changed by inheritance. Its behavior cannot be polymorphism. It's right. So we can say that it's a fixed class or static class. So what it means? It means if you are creating this as a common text, then you can achieve polymorphism, right? You can achieve inheritance. How? See, so this is a common text class. I can create another class by inheriting the common text class. Suppose I'm creating another class, public class text, and I'm inheriting this from common text class. This is acceptable. That means what? The inheritance is possible, but should not be possible if the common text class doesn't represent any real world entity, then no OOPS concept should be applicable. But now you can see we are applicable inheritance concept because it is a common text, because it's a class and inheritance is possible. It should not be, right? We are achieving OOPS principle which should not be applicable. But see, so how we can restrict the OOPS concept? If you are making this as a class, then we are not restricting the OOPS principle. We can achieve OOPS principle. But if you want to restrict the OOPS principle, then how we can achieve this? How we can restrict the common text class to be restricted to the OOPS principle? We should not create an instance. We should not achieve the polymorphism. We should not achieve the inheritance concept. How we can do this? If you want to do such thing, then you need to make the class as static. Once you make the class as static, first of all, no OOPS concept is going to be applicable. Right? So no OOPS concept is going to be applicable, right? Once, if you want to avoid inheritance, if you want to avoid abstraction, and if you want to avoid OOPS principle, then the answer is static. I told you many basic reasons. The basic reason is if you want to avoid inheritance, if you want to avoid abstraction, and if you want to avoid OOPS principle, then you need to make the class as static.
Hello.
Yeah.
So but why we need to avoid these principles?
Exactly. So if you are not making the class as static, then you are achieving all those principles. You can create an instance, right? You can inherit that class to another class. You can polymorphism the behavior. Whatever thing you can achieve, right? But if you want to restrict such things, then you need to make the class as static, right? So once you make the class as static, then what it is saying is empty cannot declare an instance member in a static class. So what you need to do, you need to make the member as well as static, right? So once you create the class as static, then by default, all the members are going to be static. So not by default, you have to make them as static by using the static modifier, right? So here the class is static. Here the method is also static. Once you make the class and the method as static, then OOPS concept is restricted. Now, if you come to this place, so you can see we are getting some error or not. Cannot derive from the static class common text. That means OOPS concept is restricted. You cannot implement polymorphism. You cannot implement inheritance, right? So nothing is, no OOPS concept is available. Even you cannot create an instance of the class. Here you can see we are getting some error, right? So if we are getting this error, then how we can consume them? We can consume them directly by using the class. So instead of creating instance, you can directly call them, right? You can directly call them, right? You can directly call them like this. Right? So this is the actual implementation, right? So that means what you need to understand, if you have unrelated methods, then don't put them inside your entity. And if you have a collection of unrelated methods and properties, which are going to be used by many classes, right? Then you need to you need to put all those unrelated classes and properties inside a static method, make them as static so that you can access them directly. Once you make the class static, then it is mandatory to make the properties and method as static. Once you make them static, then you can directly access this method and properties using the class name. So now object instance is not required. We don't need to create an instance of the class. Why? Because oops concept is not applicable. Na? Oops concept is not applicable means you cannot create an instance. You cannot implement polymorphism behavior. You cannot implement inheritance concept, right? So this is the reason, and this is the scenario where you need to choose the static keyword. So if you want to have some unrelated methods and properties which are not related to any real world entities, you can put all those unrelated methods and properties inside a static class and make them a static so that you can access them directly by using the class name. Once you make the class a static, then no oops concept is applicable. Even you cannot create an instance of the class by using the new keyword. How we can access? We can access them directly by using the class name, right? So now, is that clear? Why and when we should declare the class as static?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now you may have one question. We cannot apply any oops principle to the static class like inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation, and abstraction. But in the end, it is a class. And at least to use a class, it has to be instantiated. Why? Because once it is instantiated, then only the static member get memory allocation. I'm saying we cannot create an instance of this class by using the new keyword. But at the end, it is a class or not. That means this it's a class. Class means if I want to consume the member of this class, then all the members should be get some memory inside the RAM or not. Until unless they are not initialized, I cannot access them. That means somehow they need to be initialized, or yes or no. It is initialized automatically by the compiler, right? Where explicitly it is restricted us to initialize, but implicitly they are going to be initialized by the compiler. Then when and how many times they are initialized? Only one time they are going to be initialized throughout the life cycle of this common text. And when it is going to be initialized? When for the first time, when we are going to consume this member of the class going to be initialized. If you see, suppose you are creating an instance of this country master class, right? Suppose we are creating the country master and you are just initializing this country master, right? So I'm initializing, and what I'm doing, I'm just calling the insert method, right? So I'm just calling the insert method. When I call this insert method, it will come to this part, right? It will come to this part and it will check this property or not. So in this case, it is using the common text for the first time, right? So for the first time when it used the common text class, then at that time, it is going to create an instance of the class, and that instance is going to be shared by all the objects going further, right? For the second time, when I am using the common text class, right? At that time, the instance is not going to be created because it is already created, right? That already created instance is going to be shared. That means the data member or the member properties is going to be shared. So the main reason for static class is for data sharing, right? So this property and this method is not going to be created for instance. They are going to be created only one time. Only one time they are created, and many number of times they are going to be used, right? So in this case, you can see I'm using common text 1, 2, 3 times. In this class, I'm using 4, 5, 6 times. So overall, in these two classes, I'm using the common text for 6 times. And that means this common text instance is not going to be created for the 6th time. It is only going to be created only one time. And when the first time I'm use the common text. So in this case, it is going to initialize the instance, right? But from the second time onwards, it is going to reuse the same instance, right? So that is the main reason for a static class or static member is data sharing. So whenever you want to some data, whenever you want to some properties or a method, right, many object, many classes, then in that time you need to make them as static, and all the unrelated classes and properties and all related methods and properties should not be part of your entities, it should be created separately, and you need to create them separately by using the static modifier. Once you make them as static, then what is the advantages? The advantage is that they are going to be shared separately. They are going to be created only once, right? Code reusability we can achieve. We can reuse the same code multiple places. Code reusability we are achieving. Second thing, OOPS principle is not applicable because they are not real world entities. They are not entities means we should not apply any OOPS concept, and that is possible by using the static keyword. Is that clear, guys? Okay. Anyone having any question related to this static?
In real time, which scenario you should go for static?
I told you na. Any method and properties which is not a part of your entity, you need to make them a static, and you need to put them inside a static class. So in this case, I give one real-time example. Na. So I'm going to insert country master data into my database. I'm going to use customer data into my database, right? For this country and the common properties in these two classes is usual. Computer name is the common property, computer name or machine name. So if this computer name and machine name is the common property, means we should not have to rewrite the same logic. But I want to reuse the same logic. Instead of a rewrite, I'm going for the reusability. So for that, what I'm done is I just put the common logic inside a common text class. Second, what is the common code? What is the common thing? Again, each empty method is common. So each empty method I'm checking to each empty. The basic purpose of what is the basic purpose of each empty? The basic purpose of each empty is to check whether a value is null or empty. This each empty not related to country master, or this is or even the each empty is not related to this customer class, because do you think that customer having some customer is an entity, right? So whenever I'm saying customer, it means it's an entity. Do you think that a customer having some property called is empty? Do you think that customer is having some property called is empty?
So like, hello.
Yeah.
But sir, it's important, na sir. Like if there's a customer and it does not have like any code, country code, then like how can we identify that? But in that case, it's related.
See, so that is what I'm explaining now. So this is a computer name property, right? So
Yeah.
this so first of all, you need to think. Suppose I'm creating a country master. Country master means what are the properties? Country code is one property related to country master. Country name is one property related to country master. Do you think that a computer name is a property related to country master? Is there any relation between country master and computer name?
No, sir.
No. That means, but what our business requirement is, now while I'm inserting the country master data, I also need to insert the computer name property to identify from which machine the country master data is being inserted, right? That means we need this property, but this property is not part of the country master, right? This computer name property is not a part of the country master entity, but I need this property, right?
Yeah.
Right. Again, do you think that this insert method is important? Because if we want to insert the data, then you need to call this insert method. Do you think that this is empty method is part of this country master?
No.
No. Then that means in this case, this country code, country name, and insert method are related to country master. But this is empty method, this computer name, these are not related to country master. Similarly, here, customer data, yeah, customer code, customer name, customer address, customer mobile number, customer. So the properties which are related to customer, you can put here. But this machine name is not related to customer entity, right? But we need to insert but while we are inserting the customer data, we also need to insert the machine name or computer name to identify from which machine this customer data was being inserted, right? That's why this property is there, right? And again, this is empty. It is not really any relation with the customer, right? So you need to identify which are the things I need to put inside this class and which are things is common. So in this case, this machine name or country name is common. This is empty method is common, and this country name, this machine name and is empty method not related to customer or not related to country master. So they should not be part of these two classes. So what you can do is you can remove those things to a different class altogether. Right? You can remove these things to a different class altogether. But while you are removing, then you make sure that is this is empty and this computer name property does represent any real world entity. No, they doesn't represent any real world entity. If they doesn't represent any real world entity, it means we should not apply any kind of OOPS principle to them, right? Then how we can restrict the OOPS principle? We can restrict the OOPS principle by using the static keyword. Once you make the class static, no OOPS principle is applicable. Even you cannot create an instance of the class by using the new keyword. And once you make the class as static, then it is mandatory to define all the class member as static, right? Once you make the class member as static, then you can access these properties and methods by using the class name directly. But even at the end, it is a class. And to consume the class member, its initialization is mandatory. It should be allocated some memory inside the RAM, right? Then how the memory allocation will be there? Now the memory allocation for this class is only once, right? For this country master class, the number of a time I created the country master object, that many number of a time the memory allocation will be done. It might be 0 time or it might be n time. N is number of a time. So if I created an instance for country master 3 times, then 3 times the memory allocation will be done for this data member, right? For this, the memory allocation will be done only once. Even the number of a time you use this class, the memory allocation is going to be done only once, right? So you can see this common task used 6 times. Even though they use 6 times, only 1 time the memory allocation is done. Is that